all about that time in the 19th century. You know, when the Parisian morgue was open and people used to go to the morgue as a fun thing to do.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't have much going on at home, really. But, you know, I find that sort of dark and gothic and really interesting.
Power to Live More with Joe Dodds.
Welcome to the Power to Live More podcast, all about productivity, organisation, well-being, energy and resilience. I'm Jo Dodds, and I started this show to enable interesting people to share their stories about how they use their power to live more, and by that I mean to do the stuff that they want to do more than the stuff that they need to or should do. It's about creating a life for yourself where you have the energy, health and space to be happy and fulfilled, spending your time as you'd like, whether that be at work, home or somewhere else entirely. That's your choice.
My name is Ellie Dodd and I'm co-presenter. Today Joe is interviewing Paula Gardner of Paula Gardner PR. Paula and Joe met years ago via an online community, and having met at a Connected Live event, they hit it off and now keep in touch and meet for lunch once or twice a year. So Joe is really pleased that Paula agreed to come on the podcast. Paula works with entrepreneurs, coaches and experts who want to increase their visibility fast. With over 20 years in PR and 3 PR textbooks to her name, Paula is adept at creating best-spoken PR and marketing strategies that work. She continuously excited by finding creative ways to get her clients publicity and as helping with their visions, projects and ideas come to life.
So I'm really pleased to be interviewing today Paula Gardner of Paula Gardner PR. Welcome, Paula. Thanks for joining me.
Well, thank you. Nice to be here.
I think we've got a bit of a delay, so there might be a little pause between questions and answers, but I'm sure it'll be fine. So start by telling me about you, what you do, where you do it.
Okay, I do PR, marketing, social media. I've been doing PR side for over 20 years now. I'm based at home, have a lovely little home office with 2 kittens that are generally lolling about or making a mess of my desk. So I work from home majority of the week, but probably go into central London a couple of times a week, and then you'll probably find me in a coffee shop, sort of in between meetings, working away there. So there's a mixture of being at home and out and about.
And if I remember rightly...
basically,
see, there's the pause coming in already, the delay. If I remember rightly, you posted a blog post a couple of weeks ago about great places to meet in London, which we'll have to put into the show notes because I thought it was a really good post with some great ideas.
Yeah, well, I've been meeting clients for years. So I've got my favourites, the ones that I know will impress clients, or the ones that I know are very sort of comfortable, or the ones I know where you can have quite sort of confidential conversations. So these are the places I meet my clients, and we put together PR and marketing strategies there. Excellent.
And what about at home? Do you have a particular office? Do you work in different places around the house depending on what you're doing?
No, I have an office, which, tend to always work from there. It's quite nice. I can shut the door on it when work is finished. That sort of metaphorical shutting the door on work. Occasionally work out in the back garden in the summer if I've got some creative work to do, some blog writing or that sort of thing. But obviously in England, that's a bit weather dependent, but I've been managing to do it quite a lot recently.
That's great. I always want to do that, and I never quite feel like I've got the environment right for it, so I sort of aspire to it, but I haven't quite made it outside yet.
Yeah, well, it's actually it works very well for me because the Wi-Fi doesn't quite reach outside, so it means that, you know, I've either got to start doing some gardening or get on with some work, and in that case, the work tends to win.
I tend to actually sit on park benches and next to the canal side sometimes and do some stuff there when I'm sort of walking to and from town or having gone to the shops or something. And I keep thinking I should do a bit more of that because it's quite nice to do that. And it feels as well like that's sort of why we work from home, so that we can have those opportunities.
Yeah, no, I agree. Actually, it's very nice to be able to do that. And I find actually if I'm having trouble in the office and something's not flowing, if I go outside, it quite often makes a difference.
So what about the stuff that you do to sort of set your day up? Do you have particular things that you have in a morning routine, or is it just whatever happens on the day?
No, I'm a big person for routines. I really enjoy doing a bit of yoga and meditation in the morning. That sets me up. I also do something called morning pages. I don't know if you've ever come across that, Joe.
No, I haven't. That sounds great. Tell us more.
Yeah, there's a book by a woman called Julia Cameron called The Artist's Way, and it was originally meant to be sort of unblocking creative, sort of people who are creatives and getting stuck. And one of the exercises that she suggests doing is the morning pages. And now it's become this huge sort of movement, and people do it, writing novels or just creative thinking. And the idea is that you, first thing in the morning, you get up and you write 3 pages of nonsense, basically. Tend to do 3 sides of A4, and it can be anything that's bothering you. It could be your dreams. It can be ideas for stories or business. And basically, by the time you've got 3 pages worth of rubbish out of your head, that's when the good stuff starts flowing.
And must it be handwritten? Must it be handwritten?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
That's part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I find it works on loads of levels. It works on a psychological level because it's like a brain dump and get rid of all the rubbish. And it works on a creative level because I find it just gets things flowing. And actually, when I'm thinking about, clients and who I might approach on their behalf, when I sit down at the desk, I've got a very organised way of looking at things, and I think, well, that person's writing about business, or they want to be, they're building their profile as an expert in business, so I'll go to the business mags, and I've got them in my head, and, I know where to look on my computer. But actually, when I'm sat there at my kitchen table writing by hand, all these other sort of different things come in, different, more creative ideas, sort of, off-the-wall ideas. Some of them work, some of them don't. But I think it's a very different process and brings very different results.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting, and obviously we'll put links in the show notes to that book and any other resource that links to it. It's interesting. We were debating recently Little Dodsey and her school report and whether her literacy was achieved or exceeding, and the teacher wasn't sure which it was going to be. And one of the issues with her is that she doesn't like writing. So when you ask her to write a story, you'll probably get 3 sentences rather than 3 paragraphs because she just doesn't like writing.
Yeah.
Whereas verbally, like me, she'll talk for England. But it's interesting, me podcasting and doing this sort of thing, speaking on a stage, all of that stuff comes quite naturally and doesn't daunt me at all. But the idea of actually sitting down and physically handwriting, even writing on a computer for 3 pages, daunts me, but handwriting even more so. But it sounds like it could be something to at least try to see what comes from it, I guess.
Yeah. For me, it's a great exercise. I think you need to do it for a few weeks to actually get into it. And I think in the book she was talking about how some people don't know what to say, so she just writing the same line over and over again until something actually hits you, because it is a very physical thing. I think that's part of it, sort of letting some part of the brain start to work.
Yes. Yeah. Wow. So you're doing your yoga, your meditation, and your writing. Anything else?
Yeah. Recently I've been going out in the garden with a cup of tea and doing a little bit of a 10-minute potter. I am a very reluctant gardener, despite my surname. And I moved into this house about 18 months ago, which has a big garden, and haven't really done much with it until recently when a friend came over, helped me overhaul it, and she just said, right, all you need to do is 10 minutes a day with your little cutters and whatever and a cup of tea and potter about and just do, you know, whatever you think needs doing then, or clear up some leaves. And actually since then, I've managed to keep it in reasonable shape just by doing that. And actually it's starting to admit I am actually starting to enjoy it.
And that's, I mean, we talked on one of the other podcasts about mindfulness. That strikes me as being one of those activities that can perhaps help you to be more mindful at that moment. Do you find yourself lost in it now? Are you getting into that, or are you too busy worrying about what's coming up in the day?
I don't really think ahead. I sort of, by the time, it's funny, having a cup of tea is almost like an egg timer.
Yes. Yeah.
So by the time the tea's finished, I'm ready to go back in.
Yeah.
And actually what is nice is that I feel as though I've achieved something, because it's something I really didn't used to enjoy doing. I really do feel as though I've achieved something before I even sit down and start to work.
Brilliant. That's like me tidying the house up after Dodsy and little Dodsy have gone off to work. So what then? How do you manage your work through the day? Do you have a to-do list, or do you use particular tools? Have you got a big piece of paper, as one of my other interviewees has?
I'm quite old school in that I like notebooks, and I have a very big turquoise desk diary that I write down all the things I should be doing that day. I put this list together the night before and just work my way through it. And I put nice things on there, so it's not just work things. If I'm going to go off for a swim in the middle of the day, I'll put that on there. Or if I'm meeting someone for lunch or a coffee, so the list doesn't look too daunting. One thing that I'm learning is to make the list a bit shorter, because I'm very good at thinking, I should do that, and add in things to the list. By the time I start work, it's like a whole page long, so I'm trying to keep it to about a third of a page now, to actually give myself a realistic chance of actually completing the things on it.
Yes, otherwise it ends up being a bit depressing.
So basically, So I have my desk diary and I work my way through it, and it's one reason I prefer. I did try it on the phone for a little while, but one reason I really like using the desk diary is that I've got a whole one day to a page, and I can look back and see what I did on specific days very, very quickly. I make a note if I'm pitching one of my clients to editors, and I make a note who I've sent to and what day, so I can just look back through the pages. Whereas on a phone, that's a bit more difficult, and you're more likely to delete it as well, because you think you don't need it anymore.
And what do you do when you're out and about? Because presumably you're not carrying, well, I say presumably, you might be carrying your big desk diary. What do you do when you're in London?
I have a little notebook that I carry with me. So before, I'm a big fan of notebooks. I have a notebook for each individual client, a notebook for each individual project. Actually, it's one of my fetish is not the word, but it's one of my sort of things that I love to do, is to find unusual or pretty notebooks, and put me in a stationer's, whether it's Liberties or Waterstone stationery section. I love it. I can find some really lovely, pretty, interesting ones. And it's quite, you're not going to spend a lot of money on something which makes you feel good. It's cheaper than a pair of shoes, shall we say. That's true.
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast with Gretchen Rubin today, which is the lady who was the lady who wrote the Better Than Before book that Kathy Brown and I recommended before, and she was saying exactly the same thing with her sister, who she does the podcast with, that they love notebooks, and that they sort of indulge themselves with their notebooks, and that helps to get stuff done because they just love using them. So maybe I need to drop all this technology and start using paper again. There was actually a productivity system, which I'm sure was a book, and I can't remember what it is. I'll see if I can track it down and put it into the show notes. But it was you wrote a list of the things you had to do, and then as you went through, you crossed them out, and then every morning, I think, you'd go through the list again and you'd cross things out and add them on the bottom if they were still important.
Yeah.
And you'd keep going through, and I can't.
Like
Yeah.
Peter Allen.
Say again.
Peter Allen, Getting Things Done. I think it was something. This may not be right, but it was something like Peter Allen, Getting Things Done, or Get Things Done.
So there is a Getting Things Done, which isn't that principle, but this, yeah. So maybe it was Peter somebody, yeah.
Yeah, and you start off by writing a list of absolutely everything you have to do.
Yes.
And then transferring that into a smaller list. Yeah, I did actually try that for a while, probably about 10 years ago.
Yes.
But of course, actually transferring it to another list is something you have to remember to do.
Yes, yeah. So, exactly. Yeah, I think we might be muddling up two systems there, and I will check out both of them and see if I can get them into the show notes. But yeah, so okay, so that's organising your time during the day. What about at the end of the day? You talked about having an office where you can shut the door and sort of break off into being not at work. So does that work for you, or how does that work for you? And what do you do to sort of wind down from work and then wind down from the day?
Well, I tend to shut the door in my office, or now and again, if I haven't got to rush off to cook or rush off to go out when I finish work, I might play some computer games. A bit of mahjong or something, just to sort of it helps clear my mind.
Yes.
So yeah, 15 minutes on that. And then
well, it sounded posher than saying Candy Crush, anyway.
I've never done that. Yeah, mahjong or spider solitaire, which is very mind numbing. But that's the point, I suppose. And then sometimes it's going off to cook. And I have 3 children, and we all eat together when we can. Sometimes I'm heading off to meet friends. My son is hoping to go to uni to study film this year, so he's often got some unusual films that he wants me to sit and watch with him, or I'm there going, oh look, there's a Catherine Hepburn, the Spencer Tracy film, you must look at this, this is really good. I'm trying to get him interested in these old black and white films. Yeah. He's very good, he sits through them.
Yeah.
So yeah, it tends to be a lot of film watching, eating together, or I might well be off out to. Sometimes it's a business networking event. Sometimes it's just meeting friends.
Yeah.
And going into town.
Yeah. Cool. So before we sort of move off from the day and the tasks and so on, are there any other tools or apps that you use that you'd recommend that I might not have heard of even?
Yeah, there's a really good meditation app that I use in the mornings. It's called Insight Meditation. I don't know if you've heard of that.
No, I haven't.
But I used to use a few different apps where you'd be able to set a meditation timer, and it would time your meditation, and it would stop any notifications or your phone ringing during the time that you're meditating. And the one I used was called Zazen, Z-A-Z-E-N, and that was great, and I occasionally still do use that. But somebody else recommended Insight Meditation, and the reason why I like that is it has lots of guided meditations on there. So, if you want to actually be guided through a meditation, there are loads of different ones. There's like loving kindness meditations, there are mindful meditations, breathing meditations, and there's some with some funky music, very new agey, and they're meditations all different times. So you can choose 3 minutes, 25 minutes, an hour, and so I'm working my way through those. Some of them I love, and some of them are fine, but I wouldn't do them again. But I really like the fact that you can just think, oh, well, what am I in the mood for today, and then use one of them.
Yes, yeah. I found one recently called, I think it's called My Daily Meditation, or just Daily Meditation. I was listening to a podcast, as I keep mentioning, as I keep doing, and they recommended it, and I subscribe to it, and I get a new one come through every day, and I haven't done anything with it yet. But the Daily Meditation Podcast it's called, and she literally does them every day, different ones. So she's recording them, and she's got a lovely voice. So I think it's probably quite good. But I will commit to listening to one soon.
But one thing I like about the insight meditation is lots of different people doing it.
Right.
Lots of different voices. So even if you didn't like one, there is another teacher or meditator that you can meditate with that is different and has a different style. So that's what I really like about it, the variety. Another app I use quite a lot is Monify. Have you come
No, I haven't.
It's basically it's managing your money, but I tend to sort of update that once a day. And you just put the money in and the money out, and you can put it into categories. So one thing I quite like about that is that you can look at where you've been spending your money, and they have little icons. So if too much is going on the cocktail icon, then
then you can increase the budget for it.
Yes, indeed. But it's because of not going. I was fine going online to check my bank. I do it. But it's really nice to have it all on an app and knowing what's happening with my money and how quickly it's coming in or going out and adjusting things accordingly. So I tend to do a quick update on that once a day. And also, I've probably spoken to you about this many times, but I've been learning Italian for the last few years.
Yes.
And when I'm going to Italy, I'm very good and very, very diligent. But as soon as I've been, I sort of slip back into doing it when I remember and every now and again. But I've recently come across an app called Duolingo, which I'm really loving. So doing a bit of Italian every day, and it's all short little games. And each game involves interaction in different ways. So sometimes you have to speak Italian into the phone, sometimes you're translating into English, sometimes you're translating into Italian. And I'm actually finding that that's helping me learn far better than looking through a book and completing exercises ever did. So
that sounds amazing. I hope they've got a French version. Yeah. I'm going to download it this afternoon.
Yeah, they've got lots of different ones. They've got a Turkish version that somebody found the other day. And it's free as well, and
wow.
And you can decide what level you want. So you can be a casual user, or you can, go at it very seriously. And what I like about it is that it sends a little update to you every day at lunchtime, saying, "Don't forget to do your practice."
That's so cool.
I find very handy, actually.
That's so cool. I can say thank you in Turkish, by the way. Anyway. Teşekkürler, apparently. Okay. My friends, or little Dodsey's best friend's family are living over there at the moment, and they said, think about teşekkürler. Apart from...
Yes, it's a bit like chocolate.
Yeah, apart from her granny got it the wrong way around and kept saying sugar tea la to everybody, so they didn't know what she was talking about. That's brilliant. Those are really good, and I'm definitely off to download that Duolingo one, so thank you for that. So what about relaxing? We've talked... about yoga and meditation already. Is there anything else that you do? You talked a bit about cooking as well, or anything else that sort of calms you down?
Yeah, swimming. I really enjoy swimming, and again, I think that's a mental thing as much as a physical thing. I find it's not mindful; it's almost mindless. As you're going back and up and back again. So I try to go swimming a couple of times a week. I usually do that in the winter times, which is a nice break from work. So that's swimming is a big thing for me.
Are you one of those ladies that doesn't get your hair wet and goes along talking to people?
How did you know? Yeah, I'm not keen on putting my face in the water, so I do the breaststroke with my sort of nose above the water. So I don't think I'm particularly effective for that way. But,
brilliant, excellent. So what about other stuff to keep you healthy? What about, diet, nutrition, that sort of thing, sleep? Any tips there?
Sleep, I adore my sleep, and sometimes I can go to bed as early as 9 o'clock. if I've done the swimming sometimes, I'm actually exhausted. But yeah, I like sleeping, and I can sleep through, and don't like waking up. So I'm a long, lazy waker-upper, hence the meditation and the yoga in the morning. Nutrition-wise, I've been playing around with lots of the new fad at the moment, isn't it? Sugarless cooking.
Yeah.
I've been playing around with Deliciously Ella recipes.
Oh, I like Deliciously Ella. Yes.
Very much like the chocolate cookies.
And what do they have instead of
quite
chocolate? Instead of not chocolate, what do they have instead of sugar?
That's the thing. They have a raw cacao. They have maple syrup. So even though I'm enjoying all these recipes, I'm actually finding that they still have quite a lot of sweet stuff in them, which is interesting.
Yes.
So perhaps not quite as lovely for you as I thought they might be, but nevertheless very delicious.
Yeah, there's some research that says that if you sort of keep giving your body food, sugary tasting things, you know, like fruit and you know, dates and, as you say, maple syrup, that you don't, even though some of the options are better than the refined sugar, that actually you don't stop your body craving it, so you sort of tend to eat it more or you know, overeat it or whatever. So I mean, we use xylitol, which isn't sugar but does, you know, add that sweet flavour to it. But I don't know if that is the same as the others, that, you know, it still keeps you wanting sweet stuff. I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah. What else do I do for nutrition-wise? My diet has changed a lot in the last couple of years. I try and avoid gluten wherever possible. So at home I have gluten-free breads, gluten-free fish fingers. I'm not so, you know, hung up on it, and the fact that, you know, if I go out to Costa or whatever, I won't have a normal cake, or if someone serves me up, you know, gluten sort of normal cake or biscuits, you know, I don't hold myself back.
You're not awkward like me.
So yeah, when I'm at home and I have the choice and the opportunity, then I'll opt for the gluten-free stuff. And I've stopped, you know, dairy-wise, I have soya or almond milk. The one thing I'm not good at is drinking water, and for some reason I tend to always forget, which is weird. I drink a lot of tea.
Yes.
But drinking water is probably one thing I do need to work on. I have a friend who, we have a call every Monday, just sort of a fitness and health call about stuff like this, about you know, drinking water and exercise, and it's quite good. It's quite good for keeping each other on track.
Yes.
So that she's a member of a running club, and occasionally, you know, if she goes through a really busy patch, doesn't go, and I can pull her up and say, "You haven't been for a few weeks, have you?" And that'll get her going.
Yes.
You know, she'll do the same to me about something else. And it's only we schedule it in 2:00 on a Monday. It's only about 5 minutes, but it really helps, actually.
Yes, yeah. So I read an article a few months ago by Primal Blueprint, Mark Sissons, and it was about water, and it was about, actually, we don't need as much water as everyone leads us to believe. And you know that thing about if you you know, have a wee and it's really yellow, that you need to drink more water, it sort of blows a lot of that stuff out of the water, pun intended, or maybe pun not intended. And I found it quite interesting, because I'm not so good at drinking water sort of through the day, although I drink green tea, and I tend to make a big pot of it in the morning, and then as it gets cold, I just drink it cold, which is, you know, fine. So I tend to do that rather than actually drinking water. And as I say, he says that, you know, actually some of that stuff about drinking a lot of water is actually a bit of a myth. So I'll see if I can track down that article and put that on the show notes and pop that through to you. Might make you feel better anyway.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Yeah.
And so on the other sort of recommendation side of things, what about things that inspire you and you enjoy, and what about learning and so on? Are there certain books, films, music that you like? You've talked about films with your son already, I guess, your black and white films that you like.
It's not so much films, it's more travel. So travel inspires me a lot, and I really love reading travel magazines, travel books, hearing about other people's travels. I mean, as you may know, I have a travel blog called foodinthecity.com. So I follow a lot of other travel bloggers and where they've been, and, you know, their approach to travel. So I find that very inspiring. I think if I have one big passion in my life, it's traveling. So you know, a lot of my reading and stuff is around that. And it tends to be about European countries, France, Spain, Italy. I'm very interested in reading about Spanish Civil War, actually. I find that a fascinating subject. The actual amount of, well, it's a very sad subject, the whole sort of devastation that hit the country.
Yeah.
And you can still see it affects people even now. I met somebody who was telling me that, even in the villages in Spain now, the whole, one half of the community won't talk to the other because they were on different sides in the Civil War.
Really? Wow.
There, it still had the presence there. So I find stuff like that really, really interesting. So I do a lot of reading around that. Also, I did English at uni, so I'm really keen to continue and keep up my classics. So I do a reread of Hardy and Lawrence and all those sort of things on a rolling basis. And recently got into Zola. Read, probably pronouncing this terribly, but Therese Aucoin, which I found really dark and moody, and it was all about that time in the 19th century. When the Parisian morgue was open and people used to go to the morgue as a fun thing to do.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I also didn't have much going on at home, really. But, I find that sort of dark and gothic and really interesting. And I'm very much getting into the French writers and their style.
Right.
That era. So read a lot of that stuff. But now and again, I read the odd business book, inspiring business book. I went through, I think probably in the early days, quite, I used to read all these business books, motivational stuff, but actually I became quite disillusioned about them in the end. There were things like the E-Myth, where everyone rushed out to try and sort of automate their business, or try and, franchise their business rather, and then the 4-hour work week, and everyone's trying to automate their business.
Yeah.
And it's quite interesting how these things come in waves. And I do read them because obviously it's linked to what I do and I've got to know about it. But I think I've gone a little bit cynical in my old age and think, other people telling you how your business should be is not the way to go. You've got to look inside and see how you want it to be, not what somebody on a bookshelf says.
Yes, yeah, and also sometimes I think, I do read quite a lot for business, but part of where powertolivemore.com, or I don't know why I keep adding the .com, Power to Live More came from, is because I found that whilst I kept thinking I should be reading the business books and the articles relating to HR and employee engagement and social media and things like that, I actually was reading the books to do with productivity and organisation and well-being, which is the stuff that I enjoy and sort of takes me away from work, although obviously productivity and organisation can be both things for me. But I particularly like reading with Ellie, little Dodsey. We're going through things like Pollyanna and Anne of Green Gables and Swallows and Amazons, and really a lot of them I didn't actually read when I was young, so really enjoying doing that. And I'm hoping I can continue doing that with her for a long time, because it's something that is a shared story that we're listening to, as opposed to me reading to her, because her reading is very good and sometimes she reads to me instead, but it's not about the reading bit, it's about the being able to discuss stories and so on together, a bit like I suppose sitting down and watching a film together. It's just like an older version of that when telly didn't exist.
And it is, I know what you mean about discovering something. So, I've seen all the big films, Lawrence of Arabia and The Godfather and, all the Woody Allen films. And my first time of seeing those is obviously gone. But, my son is seeing them for the first time. And it is really interesting seeing somebody's reaction to, these films that I know are, classics.
Yes.
And it's lovely sharing that with somebody.
Yeah, most definitely. So you're painting a lovely picture of a very calm, learning, enjoyable environment. What about if things don't go quite as planned? How does that go?
You're not supposed to ask about that, okay. Well, I have 2 kittens, and they're very therapeutic for if things aren't going quite so well. But, getting down on the floor and playing with them is quite fun.
Yeah.
Takes my mind off it. Actually going back to exercise, the gym, I don't particularly relish going to the gym or doing a run. I try and do a run once a week, but I actually do feel quite empowered after it. I feel quite energized, and that's quite good for getting rid of negativity, I think. Because you have to focus so much.
Yeah.
And so I find that helps a lot, and also gives me a sense of achievement.
Yes. Yeah.
I am a big what's the word? Not a worrier, but if something has gone wrong, I will replay the event again and again, or dwell on it.
Yes.
Until I had some really good, not really good. I read in a blog recently, someone said, quoting somebody else, saying stop at the first arrow. So I think they were using the metaphor of, some warrior running and getting shot by an arrow.
Yeah.
And that in his head, he keeps replaying that pain over and over again, when actually he only had to experience once, and then he could let it go. And that sort of stuck with me, actually, that whole thing of, right, just stop at the first arrow. It happened. Maybe think about a little bit about, what you could have done wrong, if there was anything, and then let it go. So I'm trying to live by that at the moment.
Yeah, no, I really love that. I'm a bit of a dweller as well, and when you really sort of keep replaying stuff, sometimes you can wake up the next morning and think, hang on, there's something that I'm worrying about. What is it? And just having forgotten about it overnight, bring it back up again and getting all the same feelings again. So I really love that concept. So I will write that down myself. Thank you. Really appreciate that. So when you've had the chance to do the stuff that you really want to do rather than the stuff that you have to do, what have you done? What's that perfect day for you?
Well, I know how I'm feeling, actually, because years ago I would have felt very elated and I would have done something really exciting and da-da-da-da. But now, I don't know if this is because I'm a little bit older or if it's because I just feel a lot more content. It would be that feeling of contentment that I fitted in what I needed to have done. So I would have got my clients something. So, for instance, yesterday, the day before yesterday, I'd sent out a press release, and somebody phoned me yesterday in response to that release and said, would one of your clients like to write a piece for me? And he was asking for a 3-page piece in a prestigious journal. So it was great, and that feeling, on a personal level, it's lovely, and on a business level, it's great because I know that she's going to be really happy when I tell her when she's back from a holiday. And, he actually called me, so we had a really nice conversation. So that gave me a nice glow. So it's lovely when things go really well like that. And just getting stuff for my clients. Know that I've, fitted in some form of exercise, had some time with my kids, maybe, had coffee with a friend or connected over a phone call. I suppose it's all that thing about being in balance. I don't have to be out there doing mad, wild things at the moment. I think for me, at this current moment, it's all about balance. When my kids leave home, it will be back to the wild things, I'm sure. But for the moment, it's all about balance. And and actually just being very content.
Brilliant. Yeah, I know what you mean. As you say, you sort of have a tendency to think, is it because I'm a bit older? But maybe it's just because we've sort of worked it out a bit more, and it doesn't feel like we need to do any of that stuff or be so frenetic. It's actually appreciating some of the sort of stuff that didn't seem that exciting when we were younger, but actually, just makes you feel good.
Yeah, and I do know people in business who they seem to be, bundles of energy, and they're going from one event to another, and they do spend a lot of time out and about on the road, and having meetings, and I can see that they really thrive on that. But actually, I think I tend to prefer a much sort of more relaxed, thoughtful pace, I think is the word.
Yeah. Well, brilliant. We have come to the end of the interview, and I have really enjoyed it, and it's reminded me why we get together for lunch every so often, and we must do that again soon. So thank you for all the things that you shared, some really good stuff that we'll be putting into the show notes. Lastly, how can people find out more about you and connect with you and see what you're up to?
Okay, well, my website is paulagardnerpr.com, and I also have a little free e-course that you can sign up to there called Start a Love Affair with the Press. So that's quite a nice little intro if you're either thinking about PR or you sort of do PR already and want a little bit of sort of inspiration and motivation.
Mm-hmm.
So that's available on the website.
And the travel website again?
The travel website is called soothedinthecity.com.
Lovely. Thank you. Thanks a lot for joining me, Paula.
No, thank you, Joe. It's been lovely. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Joe's Gems.
This is the part of the show where I do a recap of the key points of the interview, the stuff that I really liked, and the apps, books, music tips and tools that were shared. This is for you if you heard something that you want to check out but you couldn't write it down in time. Hopefully I've got you covered, and this is the bit for the really time-pressed. You can just listen here and get the gems from the interview, but of course I wouldn't suggest you do that and miss out on the great conversation that I had with Paula. So, for the apps, we talked about some meditation apps, the Insight Meditation and Zazen Meditation, which is one that Paula particularly recommends. She also talked about Monify.me, which is an app to enable you to manage your money via your smartphone, and Duolingo, which is an app to help you to learn a language through repetition and regular daily practice, and you can use their website to do that as well. And I have to say that I've been using it since I did the interview to learn French, and it's a really, really effective app as well. So tools, I mentioned one by a guy called Mark Forster that I went away and had a look at to find out what it was called, and it was his process called autofocus, and this is where you have just one paper list that you work through and update all the time. Then Paula talked about the book The Artist's Way, and the full title is The Artist's Way, A Course in Discovering and Recovering Your Creative Self by Julia Cameron. And it was originally meant to be about unblocking for creatives, but Paula mentioned it because she said there was an exercise in there called Morning Pages. That's where you get up and you handwrite 3 pages of anything, and Paula says it really works as a great sort of starter to get rid of a lot of sort of rubbish out of your head and get your creativity working and get things flowing. We talked about the book Better Than Before by Gretchen Rubin, and also the podcast that she does, and the full title for that, Better Than Before, What I Learned About Making and Breaking Habits to Sleep More, Quit Sugar, Procrastinate Less and Generally Build a Happier Life. We also mentioned Getting Things Done by David Allen, which is a well-known productivity system, and there's a book and websites and various other resources that link to that if you do a search for it. Then some books that Paula recommended, fiction books that she's read, and some that I talked about. So there was Thérèse Raquin by Émile Zola. So you see, my Duolingo's working. And that was a clinically observed sinister tale of adultery and murder among the lower classes in 19th century Parisian society. So sounds interesting. That's the one she was talking about in the clip right at the beginning. And then I talked about some of the books that I've been reading with little Dodsey, and I suggested Pollyanna by Eleanor H. Porter, Anne of Green Gables by Lucy Maud Montgomery, and Swallows and Amazons by Arthur Ransom. And I think I probably said in the podcast that all of those have got about 12 books in the set, which you don't realise when you start reading, and then you get sort of sucked into it, a bit like watching a box set on the telly, and you end up having to watch the lot, or in this case read the lot. Paul also talked about some classic films that she really likes, Lawrence of Arabia, The Godfather, and any of the Woody Allen films. And then some of the tips that we talked about, firstly was about routines and how important they are. Paula talked about doing things like yoga and meditation in the morning as a routine, so it happens every day. And then in common with some of the other people I've interviewed for the podcast so far, Paula talked about liking notebooks to manage her to-do list. So there's me with all my technology and apps and so on, and Paula actually uses a desk diary and a notebook for each client project as well. So very much about the offline way of doing those sorts of things. We talked about mindfulness. Paula talked about how she swims to create that opportunity, and she actually talked about it almost being mindless rather than mindful, because she doesn't really have to think about anything while she's swimming along. We discussed how important sleep is for health and well-being, and one of the things Paula talked about when we were talking about books and some of the books that Paula had read in the past for business, she said that one of the things that frustrates her is other people telling you how your business should be is not the way to go. She says you've got to sort of look inside yourself and see how you want it to be, not sort of do what somebody has just told you to do in a book, which I thought was an interesting point. And one that I really liked was she talked about the concept of being able to stop at the first arrow. So letting things go when you sort of get that pain point the first time, if you like, rather than to keep replaying that issue over and again and keep feeling the pain. So I really liked the stop at the first arrow concept. And Paula talked about living more for her being all about balance, and that's actually about being very content. We mentioned a couple of podcasts. Happier with Gretchen Rubin I mentioned already, and I talked about the Daily Meditation podcast, which is daily meditations, funny enough, where you can subscribe and then every day the meditation downloads. So you've got a different meditation each day if that's what you want to do. Then we talked about a few websites. So I specifically mentioned Paula's blog post about the best places to meet clients in London, which gives some really good opportunities and ideas. Paula likes to play online games to sort of finish off the day at the end of the working day. So she talked about Mahjong and, I think that's how you say it, and Spider Solitaire. And then we talked food and nutrition. We mentioned Deliciously Ella, the Primal Blueprint. And then we also talked about Paula's travel blog, which is called soothed.in-the-city.com, which is where the article about the best places to meet in London was as well. And to contact Paula, you can go to her website, which is paulagardnerpr.com, and she has a free e-course there for you, which is entitled Start Your Love Affair with the Press. And as I mentioned as well, she has the travel website, which is soothed-in-the-city.com. Of course, all this information is available on the show notes on the website, and that's powertolivemore.com/3.
Use your power to live more.
Don't forget to go to powertolivemore.com/3 to find all the links, and I look forward to speaking to you next time.